You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Oh yeah, baby, that's lovely.
Good morning and welcome to Psychedelics and Cannabis Educational News for January the 23rd. I'm live here at paceradio.net and 420pace.ca. As you can see, Cindy's not here today. She has the day off, and I hope she's enjoying her day. Other than that, I have 5 stories in today's news. And before I get to those stories, don't forget to hit the like and share button, whether you're on Facebook or whether you're on YouTube. It doesn't matter. They've all got those like and share buttons, so might as well use them. So in today's news, I got some information on some hospitals. They're going to allow cannabis use in them. What's happening with legalization in Finland? Plus, I've got 2 updates for today. One on a medical cannabis driving law and a patient there. Plus, where I'm going to start off with. And that is where basically we left off on our last report on Thursday. And that was a law that prohibits excessive cannabis smoke. That's right, exactly. This one's coming to us in Marijuana Moment. And as you can see, the headline there says that Arizona senators approve of measures to criminalize excessive marijuana smoke or odor. That's right. Arizona senators have approved a pair of measures that would make the act of creating excessive amounts of cannabis smoke or odor a criminal nuisance punishable by jail time, even if the person is using cannabis in compliance with state law in their own homes. Now, despite concerns about undermining the will of voters who passed legalization at the ballot and ambiguity around enforceability and what constitutes excessive cannabis smoke, members of the Senate Judiciary and Elections Committee on Friday, they passed the bill and a companion resolution to put the measures on the ballot in a 5-2 and 4-3 votes. Now, the legislation from Senator J.D. Mesnard was amended at the hearing in an attempt to provide a clearer definition of excessive smoke and remove a reference to making the offense a crime. However, certain members still argued that the measures lack clarity and would continue to pose the threat of criminalization by making the offense a Class 3 misdemeanor, punishable by up to 30 days in jail, a maximum of $500 fine, and up to 1 year of prohibition. That's right, 30 days in jail for excessive smoke. Now, the revised definition of excessive cannabis smoke or odor describes that which is capable of being detected by a person on the private property of another person. So, like you're in your backyard, on your back deck, enjoying times with your friends around the pool, or maybe you've got just a barbecue or whatever going on back there, and it's a slight breeze and your cannabis smoke drifts over to your neighbor, and your neighbor doesn't like cannabis smoke, and then they file a complaint with the local police, and you could get 30 days in jail for that. It also adds presumption the law within the law that the creation of excessive smoke or odor is injurious to health, indecent to health, injurious to health, indecent, offensive to the senses, and an obstruction to the free use of property that interferes with the comfortable enjoyment of life or property and is a public nuisance. Do they have 30 days in jail for people who are smoking tobacco on their back decks that the smoke might drift over to the neighbor's place? Or is this just a cannabis related thing? Several members of the public testified in opposition to the proposals, arguing that it would unfairly inhibit the rights of adults to use cannabis under the state's legalization law and would be difficult to challenge in court to contest an allegation of creating excessive odor or smoke, for example. Now, the ACLU of Arizona also voiced opposition to the measures, with a representative arguing that it would undermine voter intent and that the issue of public smoking and odor has already been addressed by the courts, which have determined that the mere odor of cannabis no longer automatically establishes criminal activity. This is just friggin' ridiculous. I don't know about the viewers, but that's just nonsense. You know, somebody sitting in their backyard. Now, I don't know if in Arizona whether you can walk down the street smoking cannabis, but I know here in Ontario we can. Just imagine just walk down the street and somebody's out in their yard raking their leaves or something, and next thing you know, you've got the cops on you because somebody wants to press charges because the smell. Like, it's just sad. You know, I thought Republicans were talking about legalizing cannabis or changing the cannabis laws federally. But when you put in silly laws like this, you really got to doubt what the goal is. I don't. So, all right. Well, from that, I'm just going to move on to the next story. And in that way, I will stop my rant. All right. Here we go. The next one up. This one here comes to us from the Cannabis Health News. The headline there says, medical cannabis patient wins 2-year legal fight over wrongful driving conviction. This is the update of the second story. Now, it's at Winchester Crown Court on February the 10th. At-Eze, a legally prescribed medical cannabis patient, was fully acquitted of the charges after the prosecution failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the statutory medical defense did not apply. While the case does not set a binding precedent, it clarifies the legal position on the use of controlled prescription medication beyond the expiry date and highlights the need for clear and consistent guidance on driving when prescribed medical cannabis. Now, At-Eze has described his unjust and traumatic 2-year legal battle after being stopped by the police during a routine operation while driving friends home from an event in March of 2024. Now, he passed a roadside alcohol test, but disclosed that he was prescribed cannabis when asked to take a drug swab. Now, he says he appeared visibly nervous at the scene due to the past negative police encounters and a history of anxiety, and explained this condition to the officers. Now, despite no issues with his driving, they conducted a field impairment test, and based on their impression, rather than evidence of impairment, they arrested him. Blood tests later showed a 3.6, I'm going to say, it says UG per liter of THC, a common expected level for regular medical users, and he was charged with Section 4 and Section 5A of the Road Traffic Act. Now, that's impairment as well as exceeding THC limits. He was suspended from his role as a NHS extreme weather driver pending the outcome of the trial. Now, the magistrates put aside the impairment charge, but convicted him of exceeding the THC limit. The prosecution argued he was not lawfully using his medicine because it had been more than 30 days since his prescription was issued and the product had passed its expiry date. I didn't know that cannabis had an expiry date. Now, At-Eze appealed the decision with the support of Coxwell, who was another person who was involved in this, and the case was escalated to the Crown Court. The judge dismissed the prosecution's case and that At-Eze's prescription was not valid after 30 days and that the medicine could not legally be used past its expiry date. There is no law prohibiting patients from using Schedule II controlled substances after 30 days. So the judge agreed, questioning the prosecution's assumptions. Well, other issues, such as unlawful possession, were dismissed due to the lack of evidence. Now, speaking after the verdict, At-Eze says, "This ordeal cost me almost 2 years of stress, travel, lost work, and damaged my mental health, all for taking the medicine I'm legally prescribed. If I didn't have the courage, support, and knowledge to fight it, and the amazing support of Guy and Umesh, other people involved in this, I could have been wrongly labeled a drug driver for life. No patient should face that." Exactly. It says that there must be greater clarity, training, and protection for the 90,000 plus medical cannabis patients in the UK, and this case shows how easily the system can fail us. So there you go. I'm glad to see that he's gotten beyond that conviction. They've thrown it all out, but unfortunately, it's only his. It's not a precedent-setting case for across the country. But another lawyer could bring that up, argue that before a judge again, and maybe it will start setting precedent by another judge following along, agreeing with him. So hopefully, keep the fingers crossed. If we ever hear about any more, I'll let you know, because I know here in Canada, when we legalized it for the patients and everything, I had people who contacted me that were concerned that now that, because cannabis was under the impaired driving end of things, with legalization and everything, that they were worried that they would get charged for impaired driving, even though they weren't impaired, because they hadn't, they'd taken their medication before they went to bed. They got up that morning, they had to go out right away before medicating. They could still be test positive and face, like this fella did, years of stress and anxiety. So, all right, from that, we're going to move on to another story. Unfortunately, it may not be as good. Here we go. Here's the headline, and it's coming to us from the International Cannabis Business Conference. Headline says, "Lawmakers in Finland reject cannabis legalization proposal." Lawmakers in Finland voted on a citizen initiative this week that sought to legalize cannabis for adult use. Unfortunately, the vote was not favorable, with 145 MPs voting against the measure and only 18 voting for it, and 36 MPs being absent at the time of the vote. Interesting. Why were they all absent? Now, it says that votes to reject the initiative came from a majority of the governing National Coalition Party, the Finns Party, the Swedish People's Party, and the Christian Democrats, reported the local coverage. Now, regarding opposition parties, the votes against the measure were cast by a broad majority of the Social Democrats and the Center Party. The votes in favor of the measure came from the Green Party and the Left Alliance, according to the outlet. It also says that it is not the first time that lawmakers in Finland have voted on a cannabis reform citizen initiative and rejected it. In 2022, cannabis advocates collected the necessary 50,000 signatures to place adult use cannabis legalization in front of the lawmakers, with a vote happening in 2023 and MPs voting against the measure. The cannabis decriminalization initiative also received significant signatures back in 2019, but the measure was also rejected at that time. And to the advocates in Finland, keep going, keep trying. Don't let another loss push us down. Around the world, we're seeing where countries are slowly starting to legalize, and your time will come. Your time will come. Just keep plugging away. More people will speak up, and your numbers will grow. Even though you got those enough signatures to get to that point for a vote, eventually those people who are voting against you will be changed out, and others will be put in, and maybe people on your side, as we saw here in Canada, start running for those positions in the government so you can make the change. So, all righty, from that story, we're going to make our way over to one from Mugglehead Magazine, and this one is going to be talking about psychedelics. And here we go. Headline on it. It says that nonprofit Heroic Hearts publishes psychedelic guide for veterans. Now, veterans advocacy nonprofit Heroic Hearts project has published a comprehensive guide on psychedelics. On February the 18th, the organization revealed on social media that Psychedelics, the Veterans Field Manual, is now available online via Amazon and Barnes and Noble. Now, written by Afghanistan Army Ranger veteran Jesse Gould, founder of Heroic Hearts, the book offers guidance to fellow vets interested in psychedelic therapies for overcoming trauma and mental health issues. It explains why veterans struggle and why psychedelic treatments have succeeded in several cases when nothing else works. Now, according to in the launch, the posting in the launch, it says since 9/11, more veterans have been lost to suicide than to combat. Traditional treatments for PTSD, depression, and moral injury are failing, but a psychedelic-assisted therapy is showing unprecedented success. Now, in Gould's new book, readers will find insightful information about psilocybin, ayahuasca, 5-MeO-DMT, ibogaine, ketamine, and MDMA therapies. Now, he founded Heroic Hearts in 2017 after completing 4 ayahuasca ceremonies in Peru for spiritual healing purposes. Now, Gould now leads the organization's efforts in education, research, and advocacy. To date, the nonprofit has guided over 1,000 veterans to legal psychedelic retreats in countries like Peru, Mexico, and Jamaica. Independent studies, self-reported, show that 80% of those participants achieve significant improvements after one program. All right, Heroic Hero. That is excellent to see that that happening. Heroic Hearts are doing a great job, and making this therapy accessible for veterans is important. And as it said right there, they've already helped over 1,000 people with that. And hopefully something will be done worldwide, not just in the US or here in Canada, but worldwide, where psychedelics is offered as a therapy for people who need it. It's there, it helps. As we said in the past, there's on the cannabis end, not only are we battling the propaganda for years, but it's also the smoking. And they've always been against smoking, even though we know that there's all kinds of alternative consumption methods. It's always been the smoking. It's been bad, 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 bad. So psychedelics I don't know anybody who smokes mushrooms. I don't know. So, but hopefully it can, get out there and make a difference. So, all righty, on to my last story of the day. And this one comes to me from Marijuana Moment. And the headline on that says 4 more states advance bills to allow medical marijuana access in hospitals. Yes. Lawmakers in multiple states are advancing bills meant to provide patients with access to medical cannabis in healthcare facilities, with lawmakers from Virginia to Hawaii making the case this week for a policy change they say is necessary to ensure patients have a full range of treatment options at their disposal. While the specific provisions of the legislation that's actively under consideration may differ from state to state, the main thrust of the proposals are the same. Legislators are hoping to adapt versions of what's known as Ryan's Law, named after a young medical cannabis patient in California who had passed. Now, here's a rundown of the latest developments from those medical cannabis bills. Colorado, the Senate on Thursday approved a bill to allow terminally ill patients to use medical cannabis in healthcare facilities such as hospitals, passing it in a 25-5 vote. Now, the legislation, sponsored by Senator Kyle Maleka, moved through the Health and Human Services Committee in a unanimous vote last week. Now, other amendments adopted in committee would add additional compliance language, clarifying that health facilities wouldn't be required to store or dispense medical cannabis and limit legal liability to health institutions that permit medical cannabis use. Now, under SB 26007, health facilities would be permitted to develop guidelines for the use, storage, and administration of medical cannabis. While the measure initially would have mandated that such facilities allow cannabis use, it was revised to simply allow them to set such guidelines. Now, in Hawaii, the Senate their Health and Human Services Committee passed a bill by Joy San Bonaventure, now with some amendments to give seriously ill patients the option to use medical cannabis in hospitals. Members of the panel advanced the measure, SB 2408, in a voice vote on Wednesday after adopting revisions recommended by the state attorney general's office. Now, the Hawaii Substance Abuse Coalition and Hawaii Alliance of Cannabis Reform. Now, the legislation, as introduced, states that it's the intent of the legislator in enacting this chapter to support the ability of terminally ill patients and qualified patients over 65 years of age with chronic diseases to safely use medical cannabis within specified healthcare facilities. Now, there are certain exemptions detailed in the bill. For example, medical cannabis couldn't be used in substance misuse recovery hospitals, state hospitals or emergency departments, or general acute hospitals, while the patient is receiving emergency services and care. Now, in Virginia, their lawmakers approved a Senate-passed bill with amendments to allow medical cannabis access in hospitals for seriously ill patients. Members also adopted an amendment stipulating that hospitals can permit patients to access cannabis oil in their facilities and creating a working group to evaluate the possibility of other use of other types of cannabis products, according to the sponsor. Now, in Washington State, their Health and Long-Term Care Committee on Friday approved the House-passed Ryan's Law bill from Rep. Shelley Koba. Now, if enacted into law, HB 2152 would allow terminally ill patients in the state to use medical cannabis in healthcare facilities such as hospitals, nursing homes, and hospices. If cleared, the full House last week or it cleared the full House last week in an 89-6 vote. Patients and their caregivers would be responsible for acquiring and administering medical cannabis, and appeared it would need to be stored securely at all times in a locked container. Smoking or vaping of cannabis would be prohibited, they say. So there you go. In the hospitals, they are making some change, which is very good. Well, it's very good to be seen. It hasn't said which hospitals yet, but at least the state's going to allow. So now it's up to the hospitals to act and get that implemented. Right now, it's for terminally ill patients, but hopefully over time that can be changed so that it can be expanded to all patients, because it has to start somewhere, and those things usually do. So, all right. Other than that, I am done for the day. That's it. That's all she wrote. And thanks for tuning in. And if you hit the like button and share button, thanks for doing that. Other than that, thanks to our sponsors, Limestone, City Hydroponics.ca, the Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, as well as At-Eze.ca. And as I've always said, because it has to be said, because it's still happening, and that is, don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The opinions of the individuals during this broadcast are their own, and may not be the opinions of their group or other organizations they may be involved with. All medical advice during our broadcast is not a medical opinion and should be checked with your medical physician.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
Limestone City Hydroponics is Kingston, Ontario's hydroponics shop. Take your growing to the next level and create the optimal environment with a tent kit, or maximize your yield with an ebb and flow flood table kit. Either way, Limestone City Hydroponics has more sizes and options to fit your needs. Are you looking for the power of the sun that adapts to your budget? Then look no further, as they have professional grow lighting. They have indoor grow systems that are easy and cost effective, with many options to fit your living space and lifestyle. Cultivate your growing potential. We have everything you need to succeed. And if you can't make it to the store, they offer local delivery to the greater Kingston area. Remember, when you're looking for experts to help you grow, then look no further than the locally owned Limestone City Hydroponics, 105 Sunderland Drive in Kingston, Ontario. Call them at 613-548-0420.
We are people advocating cannabis education here at paceradio.net.